Good morning. This morning I'm coming to you uncovered, which is seemingly fitting because the message this morning would be deep cover. And I don't know if you ever seen that movie Deep Cover, but the officer was undercover and he went into a gang territory, basically trying to infiltrate and pull that organization down. Well, he was getting so deep in undercover rather, that he became deceived almost to even believe that he was actually a part of the criminal organization. He was a police officer, just sent on assignment to bring them down. And even the people they had their questions and they had their isms and schisms at first, but ultimately they end up believing that he was a part of them. And he himself had played the role so well that even he was a little bit deceived. And it even made some of his fellow officers and peers question what his true intentions were because he seemed so deep undercover, or deep cover, should we say. So I wanted to talk about that today because I don't know how many of us have done the work. How many of us even know that there is work that needs to be done? At the beginning of the year, I do what's called a goal poster. I do it on the last week of December, and on December 31st, I pretty much pray it into the new year that all those things that I have placed on that vision board or that goal poster will indeed come into fruition. So, what am I saying that for? I'm saying that because at the beginning, I started reading about different things that would help me along that journey, help me to accomplish some of the personal goals that I had set for myself. And I came across something talking about shadows and how we all have shadows and that it's impertinent for us to do the work. So it tells us that these shadows are the things in our personalities, in our characters, that we don't want anybody to know, that we hide from, that we're ashamed of. So we push those things so far back so that we don't have to deal with it. And then what comes forth is what's called our ego or persona. And the ego and persona is comprised of all the things we want people to believe we are. How professional we want people to believe we are, how far we want people to believe we have arrived, how much work we have done, and how perfect seemingly we are. The fact of the matter is that ego or persona is just what it is. It's a facade. It's an ego. It wants to appear to be. But the shadow then is our true self. Our shadow is the one that holds all our fears, all of our judgments, all of our nasty little thoughts and things that we don't want anybody to know that we're thinking about, that we even imagine, that we're even dealing with. So we push those things back into our shadow. Our shadow then, having been ignored so long, it gets upset and tries to push forth. And you see that come forth in outbursts such as tantrums or our temper or different things. We may cuss somebody out or shout at somebody or be mean to somebody and then you wonder, like, why am I doing those things? But those things are your shadow trying to peak and force itself. And if you don't deal with that shadow or do the work to integrate that shadow, acknowledge and accept who you are, full scope, then ultimately that shadow will come and that shadow will overtake you and it will destroy the perception that the ego and the persona has put out for everybody. So you have to do the work. Some people start doing the work, but then when they see some of those ugly little things, in their personality, those things that they don't want to be associated with, they abandon the work because it becomes too much. It's self-denial and things that they don't want to deal with. And so when we push those things back in our shadow, so far, they ultimately become repressed or obsolete. And it becomes deceiving to the point that we don't even think it exists because we begin to believe our ego and persona, what we're projecting to the world. So we then begin to believe that we are that which we are projecting. The shadow is ignored so much. And a lot of people don't take that into consideration. But you have to embrace the full scope of who you are in order to totally be effectual. Because not acknowledging that keeps you limited in certain areas of your life. You may have dreams and goals. You may do vision boards every year, but it's only but so far you're going to get because you're working on a limited capacity because you have not embraced your full self. It is important to do the work. And, you can Google it and look up shadow and find out what your archetype is and start dealing with it pretty much that way. And then do the work. Do the work, because if not, what you're doing is becoming deep undercover, or deep cover, as the movie said. You're so deep in what the ego and persona is presenting that you believe that's who you are. Even when we put up all the piles and piles of makeup. That's why I don't have any on today. Save them eyebrows because, I'm just saying. But that's why we pile that up. And sometimes we become so deep undercover of that we think that's who we are. We think that's who we truly, truly look like. But take those piles and piles and piles of makeup off, the weave out of your hair, the eyelashes off your eyes, the dye out of your beards, and all of that kind of stuff, and realize who you are and embrace that. Because you got to know that you are a full, whole person. Not some broken piece looking for a broken piece to make you whole, but that if you never, ever have anybody the rest of your life, that you are whole by yourself. So today's encouragement and motivation would be to seek God. Ask him what you're hiding, what you're covering up. Help him to show you how to do the shadow work. Be unafraid to expose yourself. In the beginning, it says Adam and Eve were in the garden, and they were naked and unashamed. They were pure, raw, unadulterated themselves. They were naked and they were not ashamed. They were not ashamed of their limitations. They were not ashamed of their imperfections. They were not ashamed of their flaws. They were not ashamed of their insecurities and their fears, because they were naked and not ashamed. And when we begin to do the shadow work and we embrace that person of ourselves and start dealing with it, going back to the root of where some of those things began, even in our childhood, and pulling up that very root and integrating that into your personality, integrating, accepting, acknowledging that this is me. I am this person that ego presents, but I also have these things that I'm working on. I know that by no means am I perfect, because the Bible has told me that no man is perfect, no, not one. So I dare not walk with my head so high thinking that I'm perfect, because I'm not, and neither are you. But we have to do the work. And I admit, when I began doing the shadow work, some things came out that I wasn't too proud of. Some things that I didn't really want to acknowledge or deal with. And then it started taking me back to some instances and scenarios when I was a child that began to shape some of my perceptions and my thoughts and the way that I lead and discern and guide my life on today. And I had to go back and pluck up the root in order to be effectual. So now I'm not saying that I have arrived and that all the roots are dug up, but I am yet striving for perfection. And that's going to be a journey. That's a lifestyle. It's a lifelong commitment. You have to do the work. One thing I realized, that my call is to talk to the masses and to speak to the masses and to motivate and to encourage and to speak. It's a gift I've been given since a child. But one thing that limited me and prolonged me from giving that gift is the fact that as a child, I had a lazy eye, but as a child, it was a crossed eye. So when I looked at you, this eye be over there and this eye be over here. It was just all over the place. And so kids can be cruel when you're growing up and tease you and taunt you. And though you brush things off, though you keep a strong exterior, inside it breaks you into utter pieces. And they used to tease me. Who you looking at? They used to sing this little song, the Mississippi song. M-I, crooked little eye, crooked little eye, humpback eye. And boy, that thing used to tear me up. I used to go home crying every day that they sang that song to me. And then I told myself one day, this is the last day I'm going to come home crying about that. The next person that say that, I'm going to tear their tail up. And that's what I did. So I began fighting. And I began defending and began protecting. And even when I would see other people getting taunted and teased, I began to try to protect them and fight for them. And realizing all along that, yes, the I may have been different from other people. But God just had to give me the realization that my I was different from other people because the vision that he's given me to see the world is different than other people's. I don't view the world with the same eyesight that other people do. So then how could I have the same eyes as other people did? So as I got older, it started to straighten out and it's now a lazy eye. And every once in a while, you can still catch it. You can still catch that one eye moving slow and not trying to get over there where the other one is. But don't sleep on that eye. That eye done seen some stuff. And it done told me some stuff too. But I'm no longer ashamed of it because I understand now that it's my gift, my talent, my unique insight in which I view the world. So doing the shadow work has helped me to tear down the root of that stain and that infraction and that incision that I carried around with me, not wanting to look at people certain ways because I didn't want the eye to go over there. I didn't want people to mock me and tease me. But now I don't give a darn if it run on over to the east side while I'm still on the west side. It's going to come back with some valuable information and tell me some stuff and help me be able to take the full picture into consideration. So I'm not ashamed of that anymore. And I will ever be because I'm doing the work. So it's certain things that I pushed aside that I didn't know I had pushed aside that had affected me. But in doing the work, I'm tearing them down one thing at a time, one day at a time. Do the work, folks. Do the work and be blessed.